Hi guys and welcome to Crazy Burger. So in this video we're going to be playing through all 11 games from the Thalamus Collection. I'm really looking forward to this one, some really cool games here and definitely some classics from the C64 days and I absolutely love a few of these. So without further ado, let's get stuck into the first game. Okay guys, so first up it's Armalyte, and this is obviously a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up. Not really my favourite type of game, but I can clearly see that this game is pretty decent for a C64 game. And interestingly enough, it was marketed as like a sequel, so to speak, for a game called Delta that was also made by Thalamus, although it was a different development team behind the actual game. Sadly, that game isn't actually on this collection, but we've got Armalyte, and it is actually a pretty decent shooter. Sadly though, I'm not particularly great at it, but it's very interesting, great little graphics and sound. I think if you're a shoot 'em up fan, you'll probably get a lot out of this, or certainly a lot more than I will get out of it. I didn't really get that far because I found it pretty tricky, but certainly seems a high quality shooter. Okay, so the next game is definitely for me one of the best games ever released on Commodore 64, and that was Creatures. I absolutely love this game, played it non-stop. I think what always stuck out to me was the colourful graphics, the gameplay, the sound, everything about it was absolutely fantastic, and it definitely stuck out from a lot of other games that were released. I thought it was brilliant. This definitely for me was the pinnacle of Thalamus games that were released, but that's just my opinion. You might disagree and you might not really see what the fuss is all about, so no doubt I am a little bit biased. Now there is, you hold down the fire button, you can use your flamer breath. That is definitely the best way of defeating a lot of the enemies. if you just press the fire button once, you'll just fire out a single spit of flame. Probably not the best way of going through the sort of stages. Now you can actually upgrade your Spitfire at the end of I think it's every couple of stages in the actual shop. You need to collect those flashing creatures that you see on the screen here, but don't worry if you can't reach them all. Eventually, once you get through the game, you probably have too many of them. You get to a point where you can't actually upgrade your flame any further, so don't really obviously worry about it too much. But what a fantastic game this is. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I'm going to have some lengthy gameplay here, so that if you're a little bit stuck, not entirely sure what to do, hopefully the gameplay will help you a little bit to make some progress through the game. And there's no doubt about it, you are going to have to save state and save state often, because it is a pretty tough game, especially the further you get into it. It just becomes laughably tough. And there are some boss battles at the end of each stage as well. And there's then the torture scenes where you have to rescue your friends from that. Kind of amusing and funny at the same time, but sometimes it is a little bit frustrating because you're not entirely sure what you're supposed to do. So that's where the save states will certainly come in handy. But I think this game is fantastic. Could well be my most favourite C64 game ever released. Definitely up there in the top 3. I think it's brilliant. Now, there are some enemies that can't actually be killed. If you listen to the sound effects, is a little bit different. You can't actually kill them, so you're going to have to utilise the best way to get past it is probably try and jump past it. It is tricky though, very, very tough. If you can't do it, I would move on. Sometimes there are ways to actually kill some of these creatures. There's maybe like a creature up high in a level where if you destroy that, it will destroy the other creature that's in the way to make your progress. But not all the time. Other times you'd really just have to avoid them, and obviously a little bit of timing to get past them. But just bear that in mind as you progress through the game. Okay, so on to Creatures 2. Now for me, I don't think this is anywhere near as good as the first game. It's very different. It sort of focuses more on the torture scenes throughout the game. Now there's no doubt the design of this is fantastic. Graphics are still fantastically colourful. Lots of great ideas here, but I just felt that there's obviously not the side-scrolling sort of platform action anymore. It's really just those single screen sort of torture troubles. There's a lot of other mini games in there as well, but I just felt it lost something from the original game. Now it's not a bad game, it's just quite a frustrating one, because you'll probably come across a lot of these torture screens and you'll not have a clue what you're supposed to do. Now if you want to rewind back to the early 90s when this was released, when it came out, there was probably a few times where I was completely stuck, had no idea how to complete the torture scenes no matter what I'd done, and at that time there was no internet, so you couldn't really go and get some help. You had to wait probably for a release of a magazine that maybe had some of the features in it that helped you complete some of those torture levels, which I obviously had to do, but it only helped so far, and you eventually get stuck again. But so it was a lot of frustration. I can get through the first few stages here, but it is really tough and I just get frustrated. Obviously having save states will help to a point, but when you haven't got a clue how to complete those torture levels, save states won't make any difference. I think it's a bit of a shame. I'm sure some people will still enjoy it, but personally I think the first Creatures is a far superior game. Okay, next up it's Hawkeye, and this is a side-scrolling sort of shooter, sort of run and gun style game, and the idea is to collect the 4 puzzle pieces that you see throughout the level before you can obviously scroll all the way to the end and move on to the next stage. You've got some different weapons that you can go through. You've got rocket launchers and machine guns. You've just picked up a machine gun there. I think you can cycle through them by pressing X. You can also duck and fire as well at the same time, which is pretty cool. But the whole object of the game is try and collect those puzzle pieces that you see flashing. You see in the top right hand corner you've got how many pieces you've collected, 1 so far, and if you look at the eagle eyes, that tells you where the next one is. You can see if it's flashing you need to go right, if you can see in the video. If it's the left one flashing, obviously you need to head left, so you probably find yourself going back left and right to find the right pieces. They will appear randomly throughout the level. Sometimes I think there's a bit of an error, sometimes they just won't appear. I've found that a few times and I've scrolled all the way to the end and then there's no way of actually progressing until you find all the pieces, and it is a little bit weird. Sometimes it has happened to me, and sometimes those enemies just keep on spawning, so you really have to move back and forward to sort of stop that from happening. But nonetheless, a really cool game. I think it's very, very cool. The graphics are nice. It does have sort of links to Cyberdyne Warrior, I think, that we've got in some of the C64 collections, which was obviously made by the Apex brothers, or is it the Roland brothers, sorry, as well, I think. You can obviously see that with the graphics. They are pretty similar and same sort of colourful idea. But great little game. I really enjoyed it. It is pretty tough, but it's still a decent game. I think you'll probably make progress if you utilise those save states. I definitely got vibes of Risky Woods as well in there, although I don't think it's anywhere near as tough as that game. Okay, so next up it's Heatseeker, and this has to be the most bizarrely weird game you'll ever play on Evercade. That's probably saying a lot, to be fair, but anyway, it is very, very odd. I'm not really sure what the character's supposed to be and why you're carrying about a basketball. None of that makes any sense whatsoever, but the idea of the game is to try and put out all the flames that are probably obviously causing issue within the rainforest here, and if you destroy enough of them, I think there's supposed to be 8 on each level, but I'm not entirely sure. So you see the flame there. I think if you hold down the B button and then press up, you will unleash the basketball or whatever kind of ball it is, and you need to sort of maneuver it to try and take out the flame. If you sort of somehow manage to release the ball and then press down next to the flame, you will try and extinguish it or take all the flame away from it. Whatever the heck's happening, I don't know. But that's the whole idea. There's probably about 8 on each level, and once you've done that, you'll maybe you'll see some rainfall, and it'll maybe let the rainforest grow again, and then you can progress to the next stage. Apparently, if you hold down the L1 and R1 button, you can progress to the next stage, but you need to make sure you also have 9,999 points apparently as well, otherwise you will just completely game over, which I do later on in the video. An absolutely bizarre game, really weird, and honestly when you're playing it you'll think it's completely unfinished. It doesn't make any sense, but it is what it is. It's a very differently weird game. I can't say it's a bad game, because it's certainly not a bad game, it's just a little bit weird. Okay, so this is Hunter's Moon, an absolutely classic game from back in the day. Really cool. Now, this is the remastered version, and I deliberately kept the intro into that because that was added when they'd done the remaster back in 2018, and I think it's really, really cool. So it would be crazy not to include that in the video. And it's something you don't see an awful lot in C64 games. Now, the idea of the game is to go through each sort of stage here and collect the star clusters that you see in the middle of each of these kind of funny patterns. Now, you need to be careful. There's a lot of things trying out there to sort of destroy you, and every time you destroy some of the patterns here, you can see the white thing going round. It will just completely replace it again. But there's only so many star clusters on each of the stages to collect. Now, then you'll automatically get the choice to move on to the next level. And there's tons of levels to make through. I thought this game was fantastic, really enjoyed it, and definitely one of the highlights of this collection. Okay, so after one of the highlights of the collection, sadly we have probably the low light for me. This is Nobby the Aardvark, and apparently this was probably the last game that Thalamus released on the Commodore 64 back in its original run. Now there's nothing really wrong with the graphics, there's a lot of good things about it, it's lovely and colourful, but I think there's a lot of things wrong with the actual gameplay. You die lots of times with no reason. You can obviously hit the water, you hit random enemies that just come out at you, there's no way of avoiding them. The waterfalls here is just so frustrating, and that probably sums up the game perfectly. It is a frustrating game to play. Now you can suck up the ants from the anthill, and that will act as a weapon that you can obviously take out the enemies that will appear throughout the game. But regardless, it's still a very tough, very frustrating experience. You'll probably have to brutalise those save states to make any kind of progress. You do get quite a lot of lives, to be fair, but regardless, those lives will go very, very quickly, and so will your patience. Now, one of the worst things about this game is this section here, and there's probably other sections like it throughout the game, where you need to utilise left and right on the D-pad. Now, this was obviously designed with a joystick in mind, where you waggled the joystick left and right to actually make speed or progress on the sort of tram train thing here, but on a D-pad it is unbelievably tough and frustrating. Now, you can't do that with your thumb, it is almost impossible unless you are unbelievably good at it. The best way is to hold the joystick or joypad, sorry, in your left hand or right hand, depending what you normally do, but hold it in your left hand and use your index finger on your right hand and just rub the sort of D-pad left and right as hard as you possibly can. And that was the best way for me to try and build up enough speed to try and get through this stage. Really frustrating, and sadly Winter Camp is also one of those games at the end of this video that utilises this same technique, which causes a lot of frustration and a lot of pain in your finger. It just wasn't designed for a D-pad. Now, if you want to play a better game, I would probably say go and check out CJ's Elephant Antics on the Codemasters Collection. It is a very similar style game, but for me it is much superior to this and much more enjoyable. This one is just very, very frustrating. and I obviously probably swore quite a lot whilst playing this game. It is not enjoyable at all. Okay, so next up it is Retrograde. Now this is a little bit of a grind fest. It's not a bad game at all, but if you don't really like grindy games, you're probably not going to enjoy it. The idea is to probably try and destroy enough of the enemies that you see on the screen, collect all the credits that they drop, upgrade your weapons in the shop that you see at the bottom of the screen there. You can obviously go down to the bottom level, upgrade your weapons, and then eventually if you collect enough credits, I think it's 500 credits that you need to collect, you get a planet buster, and this will open up the next stage, which you need to hurry up and get to. That'll be like another door further along through the level, but go down to the bottom level, go through the door, and you'll sort of move on to, I think, the next stage, a boss level, that type of thing. And you really just have to keep on grinding, get enough credits, move on, upgrade your weapons, that sort of thing. There's no doubt this could be a really cool game. If you don't mind the grindy sort of element of the game, you'll probably enjoy it. There's certainly a lot to be enjoyed there, but I got a little bit bored. I'm not really into your grindy style games. For me, I know a lot of people love that type of thing, but for me, I get bored very quickly. It's not a bad game at all, but just bear that in mind when you're playing it. Okay, so next up it's Snare, and this is sort of a maze style game where you need to try and get to the exit, move on to the next level type of thing. And there's lots of enemies in your way as well. If you press the fire button, you can obviously fire and try and take them out as best you can. Sometimes it's best just to avoid them, and there's lots of different traps. Obviously Snare is another word for traps. There's lots of traps and things trying to stop your progress. Now you can see those sort of black sort of things there. You can jump over them if you press the fire or hold the fire button down and pull down on the D-pad. You will jump over. You need to press up, I think, to speed up, and so bear that in mind as well. But I would recommend not going too fast through the levels. Probably push down on the D-pad without the fire button, obviously, to make sure you go as slow as possible and take your time. I think if you go too fast, you are not going to make progress at all. And there's lots of different things up the sides of the screen there to help you. There is a sort of map at the top left hand corner. Not entirely sure how helpful that is. It does tell you where the enemies are in red, which is the only thing I think it's worth helping there. But other than that, it's pretty useless. I think this is a really cool game, and interestingly, probably one of the first games I played on the C64, because it came with the collection that I got with my Commodore 64. I think it was the Mindbenders collection, which I really enjoyed at the time. It came with another few games such as Trivial Pursuit, which I also enjoyed a lot. A really cool game. The graphics and sound are all fantastic, but just bear in mind, you probably need a little bit of patience to make some progress through each of the stages, because it does get pretty tough. So next up it is Summer Camp. I'm a big fan of this game, although it is notoriously tough. I played this quite a lot back on the day when it was released. I think it was on the Kicks label or something, the budget label that was on a lot of the home computer systems. But yeah, this game is pretty tough. The whole idea is to try and collect the Acme boxes to rebuild the flag, and then once you get to the end of the stage and you've collected all the Acme boxes, you get the chance to rebuild that in a little sort of puzzle style game. There's a lot of boxes here that you can touch or jump on to help your progress. This one's a bowling ball that basically takes out the enemies and will help you as a platform to reach higher heights. You can see the cheese at the top there, that will give you more energy. You can see your energy is constantly going down at the top left hand corner. If that gets to 0, it's game over. If you touch any of the enemies, it's game over. You fall from a height, it's game over. You hit the mouse trap there, it is game over. So lots of frustrations to be had throughout this game, and you will probably have to utilise those save states, no doubt about it. Obviously you see the melon at the top there. If you can hit that, that will give you some firepower to try and take out some of the enemies that you see on the screen. So certainly a little bit of experimentation to be had. It's not really clear what the best way or best route throughout the sort of stages are. They will loop round, so if you just go left and right, it will just loop round again. So I'm not sure which way is the best to go. So just utilise those save states to try and get all those Acme boxes. I think there's about 6 or so to actually find on each stage. Now you've got different sort of, you've got a helicopter here, which is actually an absolute pain. I think there was an original bug. I'm not really sure if it was a bug or just a problem with the original game, where once you became the helicopter, it wasn't always possible to go back to being the mouse again, or the standard mouse, which was a bit of a pain. It seemed a bit randomly occurring. Sometimes it just wouldn't happen. Your energy would run out and you would obviously die, which was a little bit of a pain, but it's in the original game. So I'm a big fan of this game, but unfortunately I think a lot of people will probably give up pretty quickly, because it is a very tough, unforgiving, frustrating experience. It's got a lot going for it though, lovely graphics, great sort of sound, but if you don't have the patience, you'll probably give up pretty quickly. Just think of this back in the day when we didn't have save states. It was a lot more frustrating than it is now. So if you utilise those save states, you might make some progress, and you might even find an enjoyable game in there somewhere. So this is Winter Camp, and sadly I think this game immediately hits you with the joystick waggle nonsense at the start of the game. Now ideally you want to be playing this with a joystick, because trying to sort of utilise some speed by pressing left on right on the D-pad doesn't make a lot of sense. Now just as per Nobby the advert, the best way is to hold the D-pad on your, or hold the joypad on your left hand and utilise your index finger on your right hand and rub the sort of D-pad left and right as best you can. Now you can't go too fast, you have to build up a certain amount of speed and keep it within that yellow box you see at the bottom there. If you don't sort of get enough speed, you will probably not complete this stage, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people will probably give up and not even get past the initial stage here. It is very, very frustrating. Again, just not meant for a D-pad at all. So if you're lucky enough or brave enough to get through the 3 or 4 sort of ice skating stages, you'll get onto the second stage, which is a lot more fun to actually play. You just need to hold right on the sort of D-pad rather than doing the waggling left and right. You obviously need to avoid a lot of the things that you see on screen. You also need to collect or take out a lot of the things that are flashing on the screen. It's definitely a lot more fun. There's still frustrations there, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot more frustrations in further levels throughout the game as well. And I'm not really a big fan of this game. I prefer Summer Camp. I think it's much more fun to play, even though that's frustrating as well. But this game, I don't know, it just doesn't work. I think you ideally need a joystick to get the best out of it. So if you're planning on getting this game, you might want to invest on one of those C64 joysticks for your Evercade VS. Okay, my final thoughts. Should you buy this collection? I would say absolutely. It could well be the best Commodore 64 collection we have on Evercade. Overall, that is. No doubt there's a few good games on some of the other Commodore 64 collections. But as an overall package, I think this is definitely the best overall collection of Commodore 64 games that we have on Evercade. I think it's fantastic. A lot of really great stuff on here, and I would highly recommend it, especially if you like your home computers. Thanks for watching. Catch you again in the next one. Bye for now.